Podcast world, back at you. Another episode. This Life Ain't For Everybody, brought to you by our friends, Lynchburg, Tennessee. Jack Daniels. You already know what Jack Daniels is and what they mean to all of our brands. We are truly humbled to be teamed up with Jack Daniels. Enjoy it responsibly. Never allow underage drinking. I'm talking again to, I don't know if he's like becoming one of my favorites. I know that he's one of the most humble souls that I've met in the music industry, and he continues to stay humble. I got to ask you real quick though, Riley Green, do you ever partake in a Jack Daniels when you're like writing songs, or is Jack one of those things that it's been written about so many times, but you try to alleviate what can happen on a Jack Daniels night the older that you get and the more mature you get into the country music world?
You know, I don't know that mature is the right word. I don't know if I've hit that yet, but I'm definitely mindful. Whereas I used to throw a lot more caution to the wind. You know, it's funny. I always say I'm glad I didn't have the success I've got today when I was in my early mid-20s. I don't know what I've learned in that amount of time, but I have figured out that you can get in trouble. You know, especially in Nashville, it's a small town. You know, everybody kind of works with everybody, so. I'll fix me a Jack Daniels drink before I go on stage, or, sitting around campfire. I think I do most of my drinking sitting around a hunting lodge. You know, that's some of the best times that I have now. And that's what I'm spending my time doing, is getting back to that. You know, it's a tough time not to be on the road, but man, how amazing is it to be able to spend time in the woods like I'm getting to this year.
It kind of puts it into perspective in a lot of ways of how lucky we were to go to a concert. And like you're in deer camp right now. Like, can you imagine if it went that far? Like the things that we take for granted. I know that you are a man of words. Like, you're a songwriter. We are going to get into that. But Riley, could you imagine if you could not go where you're sitting right now, if that was taken away from us, like your audience has been for the time being?
No, I mean, what would we do? I mean, it is a great, I mean, I've definitely been one to try to find positives in all the stuff going on. And obviously, time to go hunt, the opportunity to get back in the woods as much as I would like to is an amazing thing. But man, just the ability to be able to stop and take in what all is going on in my life, both musically and then just, enjoy time with family again, just being able to get back towards the house and just kind of appreciate it all. It's been really a breath of fresh air. The last couple of years have been great in my career, but things have gone so well that it's just been kind of a blur, so it's been really good to kind of sit back and go, man, I did play the Grand Ole Opry. I did play the Ryman stage, had number one song and this and that. So there's a lot of positives in it for me, especially as busy as my life's been over the last couple of years.
How disciplined are you at letting your loved ones know how you feel about them? Because anybody can turn on a Riley Green song and hear you talk about a girl or a certain location in the South, or an accent or a beach or the Floribama. Are you very vivid in your approach to your siblings and your mom and your dad and your aunts and your uncles and your friends on, if you left this earth tomorrow, would they all know where you stand with them?
I think they'd have to. I mean, and to answer your question sort of straightforwardly, is that I'm probably a lot better at putting into songs than I am into words and just, everyday conversation. But, I've never been good at calling people. I mean, I think that's why I couldn't keep a girlfriend. I'd have a girl call me and go, man, like I haven't talked to you in a week. What's going on? I'm like, well, it's hunting season. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere in the woods. I haven't even talked to my mom this week, But, at the end of the day, one thing that I have to, aside from the support, starting out in my music career, I have to attest to them is a lot of my success, because they keep me so grounded going home. Nothing changes in that small town in Alabama where I'm from. Everything's the same. And, it's still a big deal that the lady at Waffle House's daughter knows my music to my Uncle Wayne when he goes in there and drinks coffee and smokes cigarettes every day. He, that's what he tells me about. And it reminds you kind of what's important. And I've gotten to see a lot of the world, but the most important part to me is still in that little town in Alabama.
How do you ride this line, and I don't know if what I'm about to say makes sense, Riley, and you tell me if you disagree, but there is like different segments of country music. And I've had this conversation with you before about how do you define your music? Because I love it, but it's not bro country. It's not outlaw country. It's not underground country. It's on the top 40 radio. It's on the highway. It's commercialized, but it's so rooted and so deep in your beliefs. And you're not, I don't know if selling out is the right word that country musicians do, to where they go to that next point of becoming a monster or becoming what everybody wants them to be on Music Row. But it's hard to define what Riley Green's music is when people say, well, Brent Cobb's not on the radio, but he's an unbelievable songwriter. Brent Cobb's good friends with Riley Green. They write together, but Riley Green is on the radio all the time. He's on award shows all the time. He's opening for Brad Paisley. He's doing all these things that you dream of. But how do you define the music? It's not bro country. It's not dancing on a tailgate in shorty shorts. It's like real. I'm trying to figure out how you're doing what you're doing and staying relevant when you're not really going to that side of what country radio has become. Does the question make sense?
Yeah, it does. The very short answer to your question is I have no clue. I don't know what it is about some of my songs that people relate to so well, but a great example is Georgia Time. It's a song that is going to end up going gold this year. It's not on my debut album, on my record label. It'll never be played on the radio. It's about a very small portion of the state of Alabama that's close enough to the Eastern time zone that they call it Georgia Time. So that regional of an idea, but they sing the song all over the country. And if I went into any record label in Nashville and tried to sign a record deal and played that song for them, they'd shrug their shoulders and go, I don't get it, and go on to the next person. So my point is something about me being from a small town in Alabama and just singing about how I grew up. I think a lot of people grew up the same way. And that's what's helped me a lot in my career. And it's kept me from I know what you're trying to say. Selling out maybe isn't the word, but it's kept me from trying to model my writing after things that are working on the radio. I never sat down and wrote, man, I want to write a song like the top 10 on the charts because I'm trying to get on the chart. I never thought I'd be on the radio. So it helped me stay true to what I was writing by having the goal of not necessarily radio play, but just to try to relate to my fans that I was seeing. And Brent Cobb's a great example because Brent Cobb doesn't have a song on the radio, but something about what he does is so cool to me. Adam Hood. I mean, a lot of those guys, you know, what we call underground country or outlaw country, they're writing things that they know about. And I think that comes through to people. I think you hear that. I think you hear things that are, you know, I enjoy songwriters. I enjoy hearing a story of how somebody wrote a song. And when somebody lived what they're singing about, I think people can tell that.
Well, you always hear the word influences kicked around in country music. Like, who influenced Riley Green? Was it Waylon? Was it Don Williams? I'm sure you have a ton of them. I'm sure John Prine stays in there. I'm sure that Dallas Davidson's in there. I'm sure the Georgia Peach Pickers are in there, and Rhett and all of those guys. Let's talk about influences of today. Like, who do you look at and go, man, I like what he's doing? Like, here's an example for you. I got in an argument the other day about Morgan Wallen, okay? I'm a fan of what Morgan does. I'm a fan of his approach. I'm a fan of his delivery. I thought that he wrote a bunch of the songs that I fell in love with in the very early stages of a career, but now I've learned that he's writing more now. When you hear the name Morgan Wallen, is he a friend? Do you get influenced by somebody that's got kind of that unapologetic deal, but he has crossed over into that poppy, you know, that like what Thomas Rhett has done a little bit. How do you look at that? Do you look down at somebody that does that crossover, or do you wish somebody like Morgan Wallen would just stay country? Because I know that you run with Thomas Rhett too, and he has completely done the crossover, but he's still country. How do you look at guys like that as far as influence goes?
You know, that's a sort of a tough thing. I'll give you an example of one that has definitely been an influence. And I would say it's because he's been around for so long, but John Party, I've been a fan of for a long time. And for a modern day answer of who an influence is on me is, I think John does a great job of being commercial, playing songs and writing songs that can be played on the radio and sound modern, but also have a little hint of that traditional sound to them. And that's a tough thing to do, to try to find that line and still be different enough, but still be commercial enough to get played on the radio. And as far as Morgan, me and Morgan are buddies, and I'm a big fan of his music. There's a lot of stuff. The Way I Talk was one of the first songs I heard of Morgan. Just loved it. He's got a great voice. He's got his own sound. I think that's one of the most important things you can be right now is different, have a different sound. But I think there's another part of me that feels like when you see guys that are having success, you almost kind of want to have blinders on because you don't want to go and do what somebody else is doing. You don't want to go sound like somebody else because I think that's a lot of what Nashville has as a problem. I think you got guys that come to town, and I'm buddies with Sam Hunt. We played together several times, Georgia boy, and when he came into Nashville and he had that sound that was different than everybody else. It's a poppier sound, but you saw so many artists go, man, that's what he's doing is really working. And whether that's true to them or not makes no difference. Is that you have to imagine people went, we got to do something like that. We've got to write a song like that. That's what's working right now. And it's not an artist's fault because you got record labels that do the same thing. Here's a good-looking guy. He needs to dress like this. He needs to have songs like this. We're going to go get him rights with these guys that write songs that Sam Hunter's singing. And that's what happens. So I think the guys that you're talking about that have their own sound and a uniqueness about their music are guys that are writing for themselves and not so much being too influenced by other things that are becoming popular because it's always going to change. There are several lanes of country music right now.
So you said it's always going to change. Do you have a crystal ball, Riley Green, could you sit here and tell me with confidence that somebody like Brent Cobb will be heard by the world in the next 5 years? That style of songwriting and that legitimacy, is he going to pop?
I don't know that it'll be heard on the radio, but it'll get heard. I mean, that's the positive thing about it now is there's so many ways for people to hear live music and people to find music. If it wasn't for, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff, I would have never signed a record deal because there were people listening to my stuff on Spotify and I didn't even have Spotify. I didn't even know you could do that, So that technology is what's allowed people like Tyler Childers to have a huge following, to be able to go sell tickets in places and not have a song on the radio. Now, granted, Texas country has its own kind of radio station. I'm sure there's some places where that's played at, but that Brent Cobb type thing, I feel like we just said it. I mean, we just brought up Brent Cobb's name 4 times in this conversation, and I'm calling it a Brent Cobb type thing. I mean, it's got a lane, I think people will find it. I think there are enough people that appreciate it now. I also have called this era that we're in the era that everybody wants to know about the guy nobody knows about first. Everybody wants to be the guy that tells everybody, hey, man, have you heard this dude right here yet? And them say no and go, oh, man, check it out and play their whole playlist for them. And I'm sure you've done it. I've done it. And the first time I really noticed that was with Chris Stapleton because when he got on the ACM Awards, I guess, when he performed with Justin Timberlake and blew up. And obviously Chris Stapleton's been around forever. I think What Are You Listening To was the first song I ever heard of his, and that was years ago. But as soon as he blew up, which seemed overnight, everybody and their mom had oh, man, I was listening to this dude way back, and they wanted to tell you that. They wanted to let you know they knew about him, So I think Brent Cobb falls in that same category for me. Is like, I love to tell people about somebody like Brent Cobb. And I think people care more about the stories and the songs now. I think people care more about who writes these songs and how they wrote them. I think that's cool to people now.
I think that's so cool to hear that because when I think about Stapleton and the Steel Drivers and going back and listening to like what he did with the Gary Allan hit of Drinking Dark Whiskey or the Adele song or a bunch of the stuff that he was doing when nobody knew who he was. I didn't know who he was until I was sitting with Leith Lofton one day in Nashville. He's like, hey, man, Hoss, you need to check out these Steel Drivers. I'm like, man, who is that singing? And then I was just enamored by the voice. And then obviously What Are You Listening To comes on the radio. I think it didn't even break the top 40 barely. And then all of a sudden Traveler comes out and then the Timberlake thing breaks and you're just like, man, you saw people that were staples in Nashville from Rascal Flatts to Zach Brown to Luke Bryan in the audience watching him and Timberlake do their thing. And they're like, this is it. This is the real deal. But it's funny you talk about like how I am at a party and I'm like, hey man, have you heard have you heard this cat, Brent Cobb? And everybody has caught on to what Chad like listens to as far as like when they're at my house. But
Yeah.
when I think about the guys that I've been listening to for years, I've always said, well, I just think that the world deserves to hear their music. And I don't know if I even have a voice in saying that, or if that sounds presumptuous when you hear me say that, Riley, but I want people to know that there is music out there that you might not necessarily hear just by listening to country radio per se, quote unquote, right now. But that's where I was going with my question for you, is that people have discovered you for years now, and here you are with number ones, and you're on tour and you're doing the big things that Riley Green is doing. Do you have to sit there and pinch yourself that you are in a room with John Party writing now, and you are in a room with Brent Cobb writing now? And like 3 years ago, you've said it before on this podcast of like, man, my life has been a blur. Do you have to slow down and pump the Riley Green brakes on your convertible of being like, oh shit, man, I'm writing with, like, Brent Cobb is a magician with songwriting. Like, do you have to pinch yourself? Because I know he's pinching himself writing with you. I've heard what Brent Cobb says about you right here on this podcast. Like, do you still have to consistently slow down and be like, holy shit, I need to breathe right now?
Man, it's funny that comparison comes in, because I can honestly tell you that in some of the crazy things that have happened to me over the last couple of years, some of the biggest feeling things, I mean, the coolest things to me are just like Adam Hood came in and opened for me in Birmingham the other day. You know, Brent Cobb and Adam and Scott Taylor come down. Eric Dillon came down to my house and wrote and played at the music hall that my great grandparents' house used to be. I mean, stuff like that is, that's what makes it fun for me. Obviously, going on a big tour, getting in front of crowds, that stuff is great, and number ones are great, and it helps me have a career to where I don't have to go back and put a tool belt on anymore. But those moments of being around guys that I appreciate what they do as songwriters, that's really meaningful for me. And also it's a little bit, it's a little bit of a pat on the back, I guess, that I get to write with those guys. I mean, for me for some reason, the validation from somebody like Brent Cobb means a lot to me, So, it's a cool thing that I get to go write songs with those guys. And it's exciting because, when I get in my truck and leave that ride, that's probably who's going to play on the radio anyway, and on my phone, So that's just a cool feeling. It just makes you want to, keep trying to get better as a songwriter.
Adam Hood came out here last week to play my birthday party for me. He flew in and he sat in this podcast studio with me and told me a story of, for 2 hours leading up to him going on stage to open for you at your great grandparents' place. He said that he was more nervous than he's ever been in his career. He cannot quit texting his wife on what the heck was going on in his head. He'd played this area of the country so many times. He feels like it's his backyard, but something about the Riley Green mystique and the whole aura of what you were doing down there, and you'll hear it. I mean, I'm not making this up. Adam Hood said that he had never been that nervous, and he's been out with Miranda. He's written with some of the biggest people in Nashville on 16th and 17th Avenue Music Row, Riley Green. And he says that he could barely get a breath in, and he had to have his wife calm him down before he went on stage that night. What the heck's going on with that? I mean, it's Adam Hood. The dude is a magician with words, and his delivery is amazing.
I have no idea. I mean, that's news to me. I mean, it was, I was probably the same way, me being on stage with Adam and Brent, or just like I said, the cool thing about those guys, and this as well as I do, is they're great dudes. I mean, it's just the top people that you immediately become friends with when you meet. And, you could hate their music and like them. And that's the great thing about them. So they're great hanging. I'm just, like I said, I'm fortunate they'll still write with me and hang out with me and play shows with me. That's a pretty cool thing.
Is it safe to say, or can we expect a collaboration or a song on an upcoming Riley Green album that was co-written or co-penned in one of these rights that you're talking about with these guys?
I would say so. Yeah. We wrote a song a few weeks ago called I Let a Damn Good Woman Leave that I just really dig. And I think I may have put a video out of me playing it a little bit acoustic, and it's really kind of took off, got a bunch of views on YouTube and all that. And I pay a lot of attention to that. I mean, obviously what songs are going to work on the radio are one thing, and the record label kind of knows that. But for me, writing a song, playing it live, seeing what the response is from fans is the biggest, it's the biggest judge I can get.
So off the top of your head, before we move on to your new music, can you give me an example of both of the artists that we just touched on, Adam Hood and Brent Cobb? Adam Hood's from your home state of Alabama. Brent Cobb is from Georgia. If you could go into their library and pick one song of each, do you have one off the top of your head that you would cut that has always gave you that feeling of, wow, man, what the lyric, the feeling that Riley Green gets when he hears them deliver it? Do you know of a song that you would cut out of their libraries? And I know I'm putting you on the spot and I don't expect you to answer,
but Digging Holes, Brent Cobb. The first time I heard that song, I just thought, man, why did I not think of that? Just a great idea. The song's awesome. I think he was doing it on the Fireside Sessions, sitting out there like they're all from the 70s, and Adam Hood, I think Tennessee Will, my favorite Adam Hood song. Dude, what a great song. Awesome idea. And it's definitely better than I could have done it, but it sounds like something that I would have written. That's what I love about it. It sounds like something, the Mississippi River won't carry me to you, but the Tennessee Will. That's just an awesome line.
Can you give me the first line out of that song, please, Riley Green? Can you do it?
Man on an old upright piano. Man.
Oh, man.
It's great.
I just killer stuff.
First time I ever heard that song was a video of him playing it like at somebody's birthday party or something, sitting in their living room on YouTube. And that, that's how I found a lot of the artists that I listen to. And something about even songs I hear on the radio that I think are great, well-written songs. I immediately go find a video on YouTube of them singing it, broken down acoustic, no lights, no production, and listen to them tell a story about it, and then that just, it makes me not a fan of the song, but a fan of the artist. And I think that's what those guys are so good at doing.
When I hear you talk like that, first of all, have you listened to the Charlie Argo version of Tennessee Will yet that he just released?
I haven't.
He just cut that with that on his new album, and he's a blues guy, but I don't know do you know who Charlie Argo is? Check him out. Like when we get off, just listen to that version. He just released it as his new single, Tennessee Will. I want to touch on one more songwriter that I assume is an influence of Riley Green, and tell me what you think of this man. Another guy that I look at like, man, how do not more people know who Chris Knight is? Are you a fan of Chris Knight? And when you hear a song like let me just name a couple that just blow my mind.
Rural Route gets me.
Rural Route, like Brent Cobb says, it's one of the best songs ever written. Nothing on Me, Enough Rope. Travis Denning has come on this podcast and talk about how if you listen to the way that he constructed Enough Rope, that it's one of the best country songs ever written. I know that this is all opinion, but when you hear songs like Rural Route, like I get goosebumps thinking about Penny and looking for her brother, and Chris Knight just going, well, guess I better go. Like it's so vivid in my mind of these conversations taking place. And I get that when you're talking to the girl in the Southern accent about Georgia time and a lot of the vividness of a Riley Green song, you have to find influence in these storytellers like Chris Knight. But a lot of the world doesn't know who Chris Knight is unless you're in Kentucky or Georgia or Texas. He's an honorary Texan now. Isn't it crazy to you, Riley Green, that those songs are not captivating people all over the world on a daily basis when you hear a Chris Knight tune laid down?
Chris Knight, I really wish that I could explain why something like Becky's Bible or Enough Rope makes me feel a certain way when I hear it. It's almost a sad feeling. And I mean, I've always been a fan of the old sad country songs, and it's so different than a George Jones tear-jerking type song. But how he says things, and Robert O'Keen's another one. I feel like I'm there. And it's so simple. It's literally just how they would say it. And I don't know that I'll ever be able to write a song like that, but I always try to go in a right when we come up with a line that just sings great, it rhymes great, it makes sense, it's catchy, whatever it is. But I want to say it in a way that's conversational, that I would actually say it, and it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to bring yourself back to that. And co-writing is amazing, and you get to write with some great writers, but not everybody says things the way you would or hears things the way you would. And Jamie Johnson gave me some really good advice. We were down in Belize at my buddy's bar down there, and we were talking about writing, and he was kind enough to say he would write with me, or whatever. And he how we got on the topic, I don't know, but he said, that he keeps some ideas for himself. That he like if he comes up with an idea and he knows kind of what he wants it to be, that he won't go write that with anybody else because he knows that it could get turned into something else. And I remember him telling me that, and it wasn't too long after that that I wrote the title down when my granddad Lyndon passed away for I Wish Grandpa's Never Died. And I remember thinking, man, who should I write this with? And I was thinking about one of my favorite guys is Randy Montana, Jonathan Singleton I write with a lot. And I just thinking about some of these guys, I thought, man, maybe this is one I write myself. Maybe this is that song for me. And, not that it couldn't have been written with anybody, that it couldn't have been a great song with anybody else, but there's something to that. There's something to the way those guys say things, and that's just different. I mean, the best word I can use to describe is just different. There's nothing else that sounds like Chris Knight to me. And that's why he's not the most popular guy in the world, but the people that know him, I always say there's those songs that covers. If you can play a cover in your show that is, it's not the Friends in Low Places. Everybody in there's not going to know it. But the ones that do, and you play Chris Knight in a show, they lose their mind in the back, And that's the type of fans he has. That's the type of fans that country music guys in Texas have. Those Texas guys, they have diehard fans. Sturgill Simpson, Tyler Childers, people that are just so proud to know this artist. And I think that's the era that we're in,
It's so interesting to hear you say about the delivery and keeping it for yourself, because when you think about the cuts that somebody like Brent has, he's never had a hit. As far as like Tailgate Blues with Luke, or this Leanne, or Leanne did Shine on Rainy Day, and when I hear her do it, and Leanne Womack is a goddess to me. Like when she was hot, like when she was doing her thing, but when I hear her do that, Riley, straight up, it doesn't hit me like when Brent does it. When I hear Brent hit that line about stuck in life's crazy glue, you might as well just put a fork in me. I'm done. I'll be teared up, and I'm a 45-year-old man teared up, just sitting there going, oh my gosh. And that's what I think music is supposed to do. But I don't get it when somebody else delivers it. So when you talk about Grandpa's Never Die, I don't know if you would have got the same out if you would have done a co-write and that you didn't cut that song and somebody else did, whether it was Morgan or John Party or somebody. It probably wouldn't have that same feeling as Riley Green put on it because of what you were feeling when you wrote it. So I think that when you start talking about Chris Knight laying it down, I don't know if anybody's ever made a hit out of a Chris Knight. I heard somebody, and I can't recall, you might know who did It Ain't Easy Being Me, but I for sure didn't get the same feeling that I get when Chris delivers it. When I hear him say stuff like, caught a 22 bullet in the thigh last night, trying to break up a barroom fight, went home and dug it out with my old case knife. I sit there and go, holy shit, like that is as cool as songwriting gets, and it's so simple, like the way you just described it. But isn't that what you're doing? That goes back to how we started this, Riley Green, is like you're doing that. You're putting this simple lyric in a time where people want to discover these artists and say, I was listening to Riley Green on Spotify way before I knew him when he just had a Halo hat on and was just Duckman. I knew Riley Green way back in the day. You're doing that in a time where things are so commercialized and things are so poppy and things are so segmented. People are like, well, Kane Brown's not country. Well, how do you know he's not country? He's on country radio. You don't know how that man grew up. You don't know the song he's writing. You're doing that to where people are saying this. Riley Green's country is a biscuit. Riley Green's not selling out. Riley Green is telling a story. So in a way, like you are carrying on that torch of the Brent Cobbs, the Adam Hoods, the Chris Knights. And that's where I was kind of going with my questioning is like, you're doing it in a way that people are trying to figure out, how is he doing that when he's not bro country? He's not selling out. He is staying as country as you possibly can get, and you're getting radio play. It in a way, it's kind of a what is the word, like a unicorn kind of deal, to where how is it happening, Riley? You're really staying true in that simple format of songwriting and not giving people exactly what Music City wants you to be, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, the simple way to put it is, I think a song has to sound a certain way to get put on the radio. I heard a guy say one time that for a song to get played with a Carrie Underwood song and a Luke Bryan song and a Blake Shelton song, and this is not a negative thing about those people, but they say it has to sound somewhat like those. There is a sound on country radio, and that sound changes over the years, but I Wish Grandpa's Never Died would come on the radio, and it didn't sound like anything else on the radio. I mean, it didn't. It sounded like an old country song, and it's not for everybody. I think there is a little bit of a sway back towards the traditional sound. I think people kind of miss a little bit of that. And I think maybe that's why I have a career, it is because it's swaying that way a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just think that I would like to have, 5 songs that were completely true to me, and that were those type of songs that made somebody feel a certain way that maybe weren't a big hit on the radio. Those songs give me more fans than 20 number ones will. And that's just, that's kind of how I feel about it. And I think that, the problem comes for a lot of people is getting too caught up in Nashville's not the right term, but that's what I call it, is the music business, the music industry, thinking, man, I've got to be doing this. So-and-so's doing this. This is working for them, blah, blah, blah. And I think just write songs about how you live and what is important to you, and go play them, record them, see what people think about them. I mean, as long as you don't change what you're doing, you're not going to put a bad song out. It might not be a hit, but I think I don't think Chris Knight worried about a radio hit when he wrote. I don't think Brent Cobb, I mean, I'm sure he'd like to have a cut from so-and-so, and he will, but I don't think he worries about it. I think he goes and writes what he thinks and feels. Adam, all those guys, and that's what's cool about him. And I think that's what's missing in some scenarios on country radio.
So when you see a shirt on a Brent Cobb merch stand that says country music for grown folks, does that make sense to you? And where do you fit in on that bracket of, do you want to write for all different generations, or what is Brent trying to say of that? And would he categorize your music as country music for grown folks because of what you just said? When Grandpa's comes on the radio, you sit there and go, man, that's a heartfelt old style country song. It doesn't sound like everything that just played before it.
Well, here's one thing. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a literal meaning to it. I mean, for grown folks, he's talking about people that grew up in an era that was different than the era we're in now. I learned a lot of the music that I know from my dad. I learned Roy Acuff from my granddad. I learned a lot of the things that I know in life from my granddad. I think now we're in an era where you don't go ask an 80-something-year-old person that's been alive and probably lived through it how to do something. They Google it now. So there's a little bit of a literal sense to what age you're in and how we grew up as a generation. I went to school during the day and I worked with my dad during the summer. I don't see kids doing that now. If you want to play baseball in college, you got to play baseball year round. I played 3 sports because I thought, man, if I play all of them, maybe I'll be good at one. A lot of things have changed over the years. So point being, I'm 32 years old. I grew up different than some of these kids that are in their early 20s. How they find music's different now. The other side of it is there is a sound that makes me feel a certain way, whether it be a steel guitar or a fiddle or just that sad tone that George Jones has. There are people that don't know that, and that will never know that. So, I tell people all the time that 90s country to me is 2000s country to these kids at my shows. And so when I go on stage and I go, hey, man, y'all watch this to my band, they don't know what I'm about to play, and I start Seminole Wind, and I think we're about to crush, and there's a bunch of people in the front going, that's what it is. Time
they don't know who John Anderson is, you're saying. I think there is a little bit of a literal sense to the T-shirt. When you think of somebody like your friend Drake White, and he wrote a song with a good friend of mine that also came out with Adam Hood for my birthday, Leith Lofton, they wrote a song called 50 Years Too Late, a modern day John Wayne, got my daddy's last name. You've heard that song. You're shaking your head for the people. You're shaking your head for the people that aren't watching this on YouTube. Do you wish you would have grown up in a different era of country music, Riley Green, or are you glad to be doing it in 2020? Not what you grew up with, your influences, but actually performing these songs. Do you wish you were singing these songs for a Johnny Paycheck, Don Williams, David Allan Coe audience?
I don't think I would have stood out in any sense back then, but I'm happy to have somewhat of an opportunity to be able to go and share a little bit of what my granddaddy told me was country music and what he told me was a good song, and something in that I took and went, man, like I can honestly tell you that I can see me going to some kid and say, hey man, check this out. Me playing Still Doing Time by George Jones, and him just going, yeah, you know, but it means something to me. And for whatever reason, whether it be because it reminds me of a time when I was a kid with my granddaddy or whatever it was. And I don't know what it is, but there are songs like that will never mean anything to this younger generation. And for me to be able to put a little bit of that, even just a little bit in the music I put out, and possibly get some of it played on the radio, it's a huge opportunity for me, you know.
Riley, do you think about what grandpa or dad would say when you're in that that day of, I guess it would be called the decision day of what single's going to be released next for Riley Green, which 10 songs are going to be chosen for this album? Obviously, your producer, your record label has say in this. Do you sit there and say, well, what would Grandpa say before I put these songs on my album? What would Grandpa think if before this one goes to radio where the masses hear it? Is that idea in your head when things are going on business wise?
I think that idea is in my head when I write songs. I really try to model all of my business decisions being what I cut after what fans are saying, you know, and you know, it's just like we said, there are fans that still love that Chris Knight stuff, and I think it's probably more popular now than it was 10 years ago. You know, I mean, I think that people are going and finding this stuff now, and they appreciate the lyrics a lot more. But you know, I really I keep my granddaddy in mind when I do a lot of writing, and I think, and like I said, there's a line somewhere in the middle of me going and playing a old tear-jerking Conway Twitty song versus me playing something that's going to work on radio, and trying to find that line and tugging and pulling each way when you write it, I think is the most important thing. And I think as long as it's true to you as a person and your values, fans will sniff it out pretty quick, and they'll let you know. They will.
So how thick is your skin when it comes to letting you know when you face the critics? Do you have this same mindset of when I write, I know what my positioning is, and then when I make my business decisions, I know what my positioning is? Do you ever wear it on the chin, Riley? Do you ever go back to that coach telling you that you just ran the wrong route, getting on you, making you feel a little bit lesser of a person for a mistake you made in your competitive world? Do you wear it on the chin, or is it a grain of salt now? How do you take on the critics when it comes to your career and your music and your library now?
I think what helps me a lot is I don't get really high on my stuff. I don't think I've ever written a song with, man, that's the greatest song ever. You know, I've always wanted to write songs that people could appreciate. I think one thing that helped me a lot in my career was my live shows where we did a good job and we entertained people. And I think that's because I didn't think I was a super talented songwriter or super talented singer, which I really don't think I'm either one of those now. I think I've just been good enough to get by. And I think I've learned from playing a lot of shows. I think I've learned what works. I think I've learned what lines mean something with people and what way of saying things. And I try to model myself after what has been successful playing for my fans. And, you know, the other side of that is I'm a little bit stubborn. I've got a little bit of that. You know, you get on Twitter and look and somebody's bad mouthing something that I came up with. I'm just kind of like, who are you? You know, I mean, hey, I still get to make a living playing and singing guitar, you know, I mean, so I play guitar and people still show up for whatever reason. So it's really hard to get down on something somebody says, because, you know, there are some people that still like it for some reason.
So is any part of your life personally a roller coaster emotionally, Riley? Do you go through ups and downs, peaks and valleys? As popular as you are, as you're quoted as being one of the best looking guys in country music. Riley Green is this.
Who said that? Brent Cobb?
I will ask him. He probably did. But do you go through stresses, Riley Green, or is it all just cherries all the time now that you're here? Or do you still get affected by things in life? Do you fall in love? Do you fall out of love? Do you get hurt? Do you get stung? Like, what is it? You're not invincible, right?
I mean, obviously I've got ups and downs like everybody else does. There's definitely a little bit of a numbing to the lifestyle change that I've had. I mean, you know, to have the amount of highs that I've had over the last couple of years, they become a little bit blurred together and you really don't have time to sit and appreciate them. So I don't get real emotional. there were moments, you know, I mean, playing at the Ryman with my granddaddy and my grandmother's there, and me getting to introduce them, and my granddaddy thinking I was telling him to stand up and him standing up in there for no reason. I mean, little stuff like there were some great moments in my career that and those moments will get to you. There are moments on stage when people are singing my songs and, you know, it gets to you. But, you know, it's hard to really sit here and try to be down. I mean, I get to play and sing for a living. I get to tell stories about my life and people are enjoying it, you know, seemingly. So, you know, yeah, there's not a lot of downs for me right now. I mean, obviously, you know, a 160 slips by and just skirts the field that I'm bow hunting at about 65 yards and goes after a doe. You know, that's a down. I probably have that the next couple of days. But I think that one thing that I've tried to get better at is living in the moment. And it's a tough thing to do when you have so many moments, when there's so much going on, because, you know, 2 years ago, I woke up in the morning and went to work, built houses all day. My thought process was, man, if I can just make it to break at 9 o'clock, you know, I had that sandwich that I made. And then it was, if I can make it to lunch, I'll probably go to Cecil's or the Rocket and get some barbecue. And then it was like, man, if I can just make it till 3 or so, I'll get off. And that was how simple my life was. It's a little different now. So, you know, your worries and your mindset changes pretty dramatically with a lifestyle change like that. But at the end of the day, to sit back and go, take a breath, man, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at. It's pretty cool. It's hard to be too upset.
Do you ever have you ever faced your close-knit people? I often think about when you're coming up, you're Riley the Duck Man. You know how to treat people. You're a well-mannered person. Did you ever encounter close friends or people that you thought were your friends that changed when that 2 years ago, when that change happened to you? Did it change the way anybody that you thought was unbreakable in your circle? Did you ever experience anything where you're like, whoa, I didn't expect that out of you?
You know, I really don't think so. And I think probably if I had to attest that to anything, it would be that my success was really gradual, especially in their eyes. Somebody in Minnesota that never heard of me and then heard there was this girl on the radio and then heard I was Grandpa's Never Died, saw me on the ACM Awards winning an award. It was overnight success. But for them, it was I could sell out the Mexican joint in Jacksonville. And then I could sell out the barbecue restaurant in Gaston. And then it was Birmingham, we went and sold a couple hundred tickets. Then we sold a couple of thousand. Then it was Georgia, Mississippi, and then it was a song. So it was gradual enough to them for the same reason that I don't feel like I'm some special person. It wasn't overnight. There was you learn that, yeah, there's a lot of really cool things about what's going on in my life, and it is a big deal to a lot of people. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, I'm still the same person. I'm just I'm playing for a few more people on Friday and Saturday night than I was a few years ago.
Do you ever feel like, with everything being a blur, and I'm asking this because I've personally felt this, to where will any of the important things pass a guy like Riley Green up? Like, you're 32. Like, shouldn't you be married with a couple kids running around the baseball field right now? Like, I know that you got good buddies that are 32 back in Georgia and Alabama that are at Little League practice. Do you ever think about, like, should I get started on that part of my life? Or are you more organic, Riley Green, of like, hey, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen? But you've already admitted on this podcast that you're not good at calling and keeping a girlfriend. So does that ever worry you that you might be lonely in this success?
I don't think it worries me, but, you know, I'm not really the type of person that lets myself worry too much anyway. I've got a very, you know, things happen for a reason type mindset. And, you know, it's one of those things where I wouldn't be where I'm at in my career if it wasn't for me being a single guy and having the time to go do what I'm going to do. I mean, hunting, you know, there's a portion of that that's helpful to my career. You know, I mean, people expect that type of thing out of me. And it's no different than me being able to tell a record label, yeah, I'll go do this show and so and so. I know I'll just get off the road from a 12-day run, but yeah, I can go do this. And the relationships I've made from being able to jump on a plane and go do this or that or whatever, there's a lot that's helped my career because of that. And I just think my lifestyle is going to have to change so dramatically for me to be able to, you know, settle down and start a family that I really owe it to myself to kind of keep my nose down and grind for, you know, 2 or 3 years and really try to get as much as I can to kind of ring out this career. And that's kind of been my mindset. You know, when I decided I'd sign a record deal in 2018, I really just told myself, look, just keep your nose down and stay after it. Go get all you can out of it for 2-3 years, and then you can kind of slow down and take a step back and try to enjoy it, And obviously wouldn't be retiring, but whereas I might go play 140 shows a year, knock it down to about 80, and take that time for yourself. And I think that's kind of been my mindset.
Just nose to the grindstone. Maybe 3 years comes around, a girl catches your eye. Now, at the same time, is there a fear in your heart at all about, will it ever get back to what we called normal? Because I loved the ability to go to a concert and hold a cold beer and watch Riley Green on stage sing I Wish Grandpa's Never Died, or there was this girl. I cherish those. I bet you I took it for granted, because now here I am in almost November of 2020. This happened, shutdown happened March 17th, around there when I was at spring training in Arizona. It's still going on, Riley. It's still here. Like, do you get scared that the new norm is here and that you might not ever get to see that again? Or are you so optimistic that that it's coming back?
It'll be back, man. From a business mindset, there are too many people losing way more money than I am for it not to come back. I mean, obviously, I can't go play shows like I'd like to, but I can go play a cut down 5,000 cap venue. We can go put 500 people in, or 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever. I can go play outdoor amphitheater cut down. But there are people that you can't go put Jason Aldean in a 20,000 seat arena. And it costs so much for these big time artists to go play a show that they can't make it make sense to go do a show cut down. So business mind, there are too many people in too many industries losing way too much money for it not to get back to normal. And that's just from a music entertainment standpoint. The other side of it is I don't see people carrying on with their lives in such a miserable way when you can't go fellowship with other people. I don't see that happening. I really don't. People are not going to spend their lives like that. I don't know if I'm not a scientist. I don't know if it's the vaccine, or I don't know how it'll happen, but we're just going to get back to some kind of normal. I feel that.
Where do you hope it happens for you first? I know that our time is coming to an end. I know that you got to get across the border. I get it. I know that you're going to another state. You're chasing bone right now. You're getting some bucks on the ground. Where do you want it to be? Like, if you had your pick, where's the audience at? Are you supporting? Are you headlining? What would that ultimate show be of, like, when it's kind of somewhat back to normal, where it's not a cut down show as you describe it?
Well, the last show I played was on the beach in front of the Floribama for about 5,000 people. It wouldn't be a bad place to kick it back off at, with some 90-degree weather down there with a margarita sitting on the beach with about 5,000-6,000 of my closest friends down there. That's a pretty good spot. Adam Hood opened that show for me. The Ryman wouldn't be a bad spot. Man, I'd play anywhere right now. If they put a stage in front of Kentucky Fried Chicken in Jacksonville, Alabama, I'd go play on it. We're not going to call many gigs this time of year.
I like it, Cole. What is so special about that place, Riley, the Floribama? Why is it so cool?
It's the same reason that those old songs mean something to me. I went there as a kid. My folks used to take me in there. I watched that place when it was just a tent over the stage, and I used to go listen to guys tell stories about how they wrote songs and watch people enjoy the story as much as they did the song. And I got to sit there in the audience and watch that. I learned how to play a show out there, watching Big Earl sing dirty songs, and I got to watch how the crowd reacted to certain things they did on stage and how it was almost comical. Some of the things there's a moment for that in a show. There's a moment for, hey, y'all hold your beer up and here's Sweet Home Alabama. And there's a moment to tell a story and sing a song that makes somebody want to cry. And because of all that, I owe a lot to that place, and I just enjoy spending time down there.
If you had a choice between a rodeo, Farm Aid, and a beach vibe, Kenny Chesney, Floribama, David Lee Murphy, which one do you pick to play in front of, or do you like all three?
All three of those, because I put on a concert in Alabama that was more like a Farm Aid called the Back 40 Bash on some of my property. Just moonshine, jar lids as far as I could see. And we've done rodeos. I mean, out in Texas, that's just a different feel, you know. But then also, I could go down and when it's not hunting season, I can be a beach bum. I could live down there.
I love the beach too, but I also like Chris Ledoux. I like the idea of being in Cheyenne, Wyoming at Frontier Days and like seeing you rock it up there right after the rodeo performance that night. Might be you and George Strait that night, because that just makes sense for country music. That's like Chris Ledoux and the tearing the last drive-in down and Copenhagen Angel and all of the things that go into the rodeo lifestyle. Like you portray that, but you also have that Southern vibe, girl on the beach feel, and it's all country, right? That is all country. And then you got farming and you got ranching and you got cropland, Kansas and the prairies and everything that you're experiencing right now. Like literally you're sitting right in the heartland of America right now. And all of that is wrapped up into this music career that kind of like was brought to you in the Southeast. Like you grew up in the Southeast and now you're getting to experience all of these different locales, all of these different influences. It's got to be like the most mind-blowing thing to go from 500 seats in Georgia to being in Salt Lake City in front of 20,000 people with Brad Paisley bringing you back out and you guys doing a duo together. I mean, that's just freaking awesome, bro.
It's been a really, really exciting thing to see how country music and country people are literally everywhere. And I didn't know that. I didn't know how rural this part of the country was until I got to travel a little bit and see it. But it's just awesome for me to go see that people can relate to things about a small town in Alabama all over the country.
It's killer, ain't it? Now, awesome. last thing before I let you go deer hunting. Do you see people relating more to you as a hunter, fisher, gatherer? Are they loving that part of you? I know you're not going to apologize for it. Are you getting any pushback there right now? Have you, are you still battling with that? Have you ever really battled with that? Or does it even matter? You're going no matter what.
Oh, you couldn't stop me. I'm going. I've always been the type that I'm not going to try to explain to somebody why I enjoy something or why they should enjoy it. I know when I'm in the middle of, Truman, Arkansas, in a blind, and it's about 30 minutes before shooting light, and you start to see the sun breaking, and you hear some ducks off in the distance, and you got your coffee sitting there, and you're freezing, but it's just enough to warm you up. I know in that moment that's the right thing I should be doing. That's where I'm supposed to be at. In the same way of hearing the woods waking up in the morning in a bow stand or a turkey gobble or whatever it is. And I know that there are moments in every hunt that I've had that somebody would enjoy. Might not be for everybody, but there's a great moment in every hunt that I've ever had that I think translate to anybody. And I'm not going to try to explain to somebody why they should like it. And I don't really think I have to explain why I like it. But the really great thing about my fans is I was that guy from day one. It's not going to change. So I haven't really had a whole lot of backlash. I think it'd be different for somebody that didn't and then started. And then, me and Thomas Red had that conversation of, he's from Georgia. He's as country as anybody is. Some of his fans think his music's a little more pop, and he probably has a lot broader fan base than I do. And some of them are probably not hunters. Some of them may be anti-hunters. And that's something that he probably deals with. But my thing's kind of like, you know what you're going to get when you come to a Rally Green show. And you know what you're going to get when you click on Rally Duckman Instagram page. It's going to be some pictures of ducks and deer. And it's just as long as you're kind of true to who you are, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of backlash for it.
I love it, man. I love it. You've had some success lately in the woods. You're working with some luck right now. You're going to Kansas. You're leaving Nebraska for Kansas. Are you riding when you get back to the lodge at night? And can we expect new music soon? I know you got to go, Riley. I appreciate you being here.
We're definitely got some new. We just cut two songs. Probably gonna get in the studio and cut another 3 or 4 songs. Probably put something out before the end of the year. Probably tie it all together as a full length album. First of next year sometime. I haven't been writing as much as I should probably, but I'm kind of in that. I've always been the big fan of getting a bunch of ideas. Not necessarily trying to write every day, but just every time something comes to my mind, jot it down, leave it alone. Go back and revisit it one day when I really feel like I've got, some creative juices flowing or I've got the right person there or whatever it is, and try to go through and see what really jumps off the page at me. So I've been, kind of stockpiling some stuff, and I'll probably try to get back to writing here when hunting season winds down. I'm pretty mad at the deer right now. So I'm going to chase them around for another few weeks until I get that bug taken care of, and then it'll be duck season, and you know how that goes.
So, Brent Cobb, this is a personal invite. You don't have to answer if you don't want. Brent Cobb's coming out to hunt with me in California. I won't say dates on here so nobody knocks down your door. Would you consider coming out, picking around a fire and hunting with Brent Cobb and chilling at a campfire and seeing some speckled belly geese and mallards do it right?
Let's go.
I'm serious. I'm going to send you the dates.
All right, send it to me.
All right, I need to go out again. Last time we went out with different round here. Can we go out with Georgia time today? Because I love it. Or do you mind?
No, man, let's do it.
Guys, girls, that's Riley Green at Riley Duckman on Instagram, the man. So humbled. I love having you on here, bro, because it's so enlightening to know that you can be so rooted when you've experienced, and I know a little bit of what you've experienced. I've look at my life, Riley Green, and when like, I'm not even supposed to know what a duck is being where I'm from. Like, I've had so many people say, you ain't from Arkansas, you're not going to know how to, and I'm just like, I am so blessed and humbled to be able to talk to guys like you, call you a friend, have you come on and support our brands in my podcast, and to know that, man, hey, hard work and vision and just tenacity and treating people the right way can pay off. And that's what you do, man. Your mom and dad and your grandpa and everybody that you envisioned and write about and keep as part of your crew, your friends, like, it's evident, bro. So like, the career is so awesome. I congratulate you, and I'm humbled to have you on here, man. Truly, I mean that as a friend.
Chad, I appreciate it, buddy. Always good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, and I want you to text me a picture of that buck you just put down, would you?
All right, I'll send it to you, man.
That's Riley Green, y'all. Tom, hit that button. This is Georgia Time by the one and only Riley Green. You've been listening to This Life Ain't For Everybody podcast. Thank y'all so much for subscribing. See y'all next time.
But she's got her feet stuck in the Georgia clay.